Hey guys, it is March 3rd, 2017, time for Q&A response from March 1st. I posted this at 9 o'clock at night on March 1st, so I gave it a day just to see let some different people see the thread. It looks like we got a good handful of questions here. I'll go through these. Got a couple on the Facebook Messenger too, so I'll have to remember to get those. Let's see here. First question, occlusion training. Who should do it? How often? And how long should you keep the bands wrapped while you're doing it? So who should do it? I mean, anyone can do occlusion training. I think there are some applications that are better than others. For example, injuries, tendonitis, joint issues, things like that. You can reduce load and still get the good stimulus. So that's obviously beneficial for people that, especially training stuff like arms, if you have elbow issues and things like that, something you could rotate in. Another good time, if you're training repeatedly, let's say it's a weak body part, let's say your legs are weak. Arms and legs are the easiest thing to do occlusion training on. So let's say your legs are a weak body part and you want to train them 3 or 4 days a week. But recovery is an issue. So occlusion training is typically pretty easy to recover from. So you can add that in as a different stimulus for the cell swelling effect. Just all the blood volume. I mean, nutrients, swelling of the tissue. It's a different type of hypertrophy than your traditional break down the fiber, repair the fiber with progressive overload. So you can't necessarily progressive overload the muscle 4 days a week. Some people might be able to, but a lot of people, just from the CNS standpoint, won't be able to recover from that. So occlusion training can be handy there as well. So how often? I mean, in a case like that, you might be doing it once a week or something, maybe twice at most. And it would be, let's say, 2 sessions are regular, maybe you squat twice, or you do 2 squat variations twice and another compound movement. And then on the 3rd day, you have a session where lower body is not your primary focus, but you add some extra lower body at the end via the occlusion. And the recovery is pretty easy from that. So you're able to add that extra volume for your legs throughout the entire week. How long should you leave the bands or wraps on? As long as you're doing the exercise, you don't need to take them off in between, sets or anything. I mean, I've left them on as long as probably 40 minutes or so. I mean, I don't know if I'd suggest that. It gets pretty painful after a while. I mean, realistically, you're not going to be doing a whole session just occlusion training, most likely. So if it's just like a giant set or just a couple exercises or something like that, 20, 30 minutes, I mean, you're going to be all right as long as the wraps are within reasonable tightness. Next one, gay for pay, how much? I don't really have rates, just depends on what the guy wants, how ugly he is, or how attractive he is. It could be something as basic as a reach around, that's pretty cheap. If you want to get me naked and stuff, it's going to cost a little bit more, so. If you want a specific quote, just message me and we'll get that taken care of. Let's see. Arnold Classic, 2017 champ. I would say it's probably going to be Cedric McMillan, just because he's kind of been knocking on that door for the Arnold Classic. They like his look there. He just got edged out by Kai Green last year, so I would say probably him, assuming he's at least that good or better. I mean, I don't really foresee anyone else in that lineup beating him. I could be wrong. Lineup's not super strong, but there's a lot of guys that are close together as far as, no one's blowing anyone out of the water, really. You have a few guys that are going to be right up there. So you don't have any Kai Greens in the lineup this year, really. So it should be a good show, but I would imagine he's probably going to be the champ. Haven't seen him, haven't really seen anyone, few guys, but that's my prediction. Do you believe that Insta famous fitness athlete is here to stay, or do you think the current prevailing trend, while profitable for many companies, will eventually die out? Oh my. Well, I'm sure I'm sure it'll die out or at least evolve at some point. I really don't think social media or any kind of internet-based interaction with people, any kind of interface, like, we have Instagram, Facebook. I mean, I think there's going to be platforms like that for a long time. Whether they evolve or not is yet to be seen. They probably will to some extent or change, but I would imagine that while those things are present, that there'll be this trend to an extent. Now, I'd like to say that it'll die out just because I think people should wise up a little bit just to who they follow. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm sure there's people that have, 200,000 followers or a million followers that are good, have good content. But I mean, there's a lot of fools too, and there's a lot of stuff that's just garbage and fake. And so if it's just for entertainment purposes, I mean, I think those people will always be there. And, I mean, like there's a lot of guys or girls that might watch somebody like Rich Piana, for example. They don't believe half the shit he says, but it's just entertainment value. It really is all it is. So I think that there's some merit in that. Whether or not, how much, advice people are taking from these Insta famous individuals, I don't know. I hope not a whole lot, but, I think they'll be there to some degree. They'll have to evolve, keep evolving, but probably to some extent they'll always be there. Next question. I think you posted a study about this a while back, but in your opinion, what plays more of a role in progressing lagging body parts, volume or frequency? I don't know if I might have posted a study, I don't remember. But really, I mean, total volume over the week, total amount of work is probably, I would say, very important. But it's how you get that volume. Are you just taking, let's say it's your chest is lagging. Are you just adding more volume to a single chest session, or do you want to add more volume through multiple sessions a week? I think combining the two is really what's important. You're probably going to go up in volume to some extent for the body part that you need to progress, but you can do it through a more frequent program, so you can still have the recovery ability to train each time. So if you're doing, whatever, like 40 or 30 sets for chest throughout the entire week, you can split it up into 3 sessions of 10 sets or whatever the exercises are. And you can vary exercises and vary rep ranges, vary techniques. Are you just doing straight sets, progressive overload? Are you doing some kind of intensity technique? Are you including eccentrics? Anything like that. I would say volume is extremely important. Literature is going to show that, but breaking that volume up throughout a higher frequency program is probably going to be the best of both worlds. Thoughts on crap loading before a show? This is actually somebody from my gym. We talked about this a little bit. He just was curious, I think. I think it has its place, definitely. The biggest thing to think about when doing something like this is just the risk, just because typically you're introducing a lot of foods that you're just not used to. So you run the risk of digestive issues. So you might look, let's say you junk load on some stuff, you might look really good right after, vascular, hard, full, and you start holding some subcutaneous water in the stomach because it just irritates your GI tract just a little bit and kind of gives you a film. So that's an issue. And so timing, you could also say timing could be the issue. You time it right, it might not matter. You time it wrong, it definitely matter. Or it might just be a bad idea in general just because digestion. I would say that in most cases, if I'm going to do anything like that, I would have had to have tested it on the person previously, at least to some extent, just to kind of see how they are going to digest those foods and how they're going to look. In general, having not tried it throughout a prep at all, it wouldn't be my first go-to. But you can definitely make it work, and you can make it work very, very well if you're pretty confident in what the effects are going to be. How do you determine whether to decrease calories, increase cardio, or add another increase in expenditure through something like circuit training, etc. Okay, so asking how do I decide how I'm going to create a deficit? I asked this particularly when decreasing calories is still an option. Person is not at the point where they cannot feasibly decrease food. Okay, so they still have options. This person's calories are probably gotten lower, but they're not so low that you don't want to pull any more food, and you still have room to do, increase cardio or training. So what do? Ideally, I like to just basically pull from different avenues if I can, just because from what I've found, most people will adapt a little bit less when you're getting energy expenditure through activity and creating a deficit through caloric reduction. So if you can do both to some extent, I think it's a good thing. Different pathways for fat loss and a little bit less room for adaptation. Your body's going to adapt to the fact that you're in a calorie deficit and you're burning more than you're eating. It's going to figure that out. In most of my experience, I've found that pulling from different areas works a little bit better. Now, you might find in someone that, that maybe you just can't add more training or more circuit training or hit cardio or things like that because they just won't recover. It just eats into their recovery ability so badly from a nervous system standpoint, and that they just can't do it, and their maximum recoverable volume goes way down, so their training starts to suck, basically, and their recovery starts to suck. So you might find that, and then in which case, you might have to resort to calorie pulling a little bit more and a little less activity. But ideally, I like to do a little bit from everywhere as long as I can until something within a prep gets really low, and then I might have to get a little more specific. I hope that makes sense. Let's see, let's go to the messenger here. I had another one. All right. Okay, so this is just an exercise question. What are some really good things to do for a strong core? Front squats feel great, and compound movements in general, but I'm going into the Marines soon and I need to bring that part of me up to par. Okay, core, obviously compound movements, yes, that's a big thing. I mean, you're gonna get a lot of indirect work that way. Directly, I think another good thing that people miss out on is training the transverse ab, and I've talked about this in videos and stuff before. So making sure you're training transverse, making sure that you are actually doing ab movements weighted. If you want a stronger ab muscle, then you are going to need to apply some weight to it. So, making sure that you are actually progressively overloading your abs. To an extent, you don't need to huck around a bunch of weight, but you do need to do things weighted, and you bring it down into rep ranges that are going to produce, strength gains, and not doing, 50, 100 rep sets of abs. But I like the idea of training the transverse with that, and then also make sure you have a strong lower back, because, everything's in a push-pull system. So strong erectors, strong hips, strong abs equals a strong core. So train your transverse, train things weighted. Don't be afraid to put some weight on there, obviously within the realm of keeping pretty good form. All right, sounds like my pan's making a lot of noise over there. I guess there is one more. If you could be a student to any coach as your mentor, who would it be and why? Oh man. Geez, I don't know. I've never really thought about this that much, to be honest. Man, I guess I would probably have to say, I'm going to give you two just because I'm breaking the rules here. I would probably say Chris Aceto. I'll just say Chris Aceto. And the only reason I say that is just because at the end of the day, I mean, coaching on a high level really comes down to reading biofeedback and being very good at it. So I think that regardless of how much information you know, I'm confident that I know a good amount of information. I can provide that information. I can apply that information, and I can always learn more. Biofeedback is an art. It is something that I don't care how smart you are. It is not something that you're going to read in a textbook. He's very good at biofeedback. It's something maybe I can pick up some stuff from him. So I would say probably him, and that's why, really. So I think that's all the questions for today, guys. If you want to participate in the Q&A threads, I really appreciate it. I love doing these. I'll put up another thread next week, and I'll tag all you guys in the video, and we'll talk to you next time.